You're probably so thrilled to hear that you can get $1,200 from the government because the stimulus bill just passed. And you might be so happy to hear that the government is finally helping the American people, right? Well, not so fast. Before you get giddy about your $1,200, you should probably be aware of all the harm this bill is going to do to your wallet and how Washington is using your hardship to benefit themselves. This is the most expensive spending bill in U.S. history, and 91% of the money will go to special interests instead of hardworking Americans like you. So you're probably all aware by now that President Donald Trump just signed a historic $2 trillion relief bill to help the country as we deal with the C word. You know, the only thing that's going on right now, but we can't even talk about it without putting our channel at risk. Thanks, YouTube. The bill is meant to provide Americans with assistance as the economy takes a turn for the worse during this crisis. However, it's actually going to do exactly the opposite. But before I go into detail about how this bill is going to harm you and benefit the establishment, please visit patreon.com/KaitlinBennett to directly support my work and help me get security for when I finally get to go out and film again. For just $5 a month, you will get access to my private Facebook group. And while you're quarantined, we can have some fun in there and chit chat and get to know each other a little better. You can also get super cool perks such as an autographed photo in the mail every month, or your name right here in the description of every YouTube video. And make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we upload a new video. On Friday, March 27, 3 weeks after the C word has infected over 100,000 Americans and taken a toll on our economy, President Trump signed a $2 trillion relief bill. However, the vote in the House was nearly delayed after Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie tried to force a full yes or no vote on the measure, instead of letting it pass through Congress with simple shouts of yay or nay, also known as a voice vote. On Friday, Massie explained to reporters why he felt so strongly about this.
If they're telling people to drive a truck, if they're telling people to bag groceries and grow their food, by golly, they can be in there and they can vote. The truth, if you're willing to report it, is they don't want a recorded vote. They don't want to be on record of making the biggest mistake in history.
So Massie's initiative to force a vote failed and the bill passed anyway, leading to President Trump viciously attacking Massie on Twitter, calling him a third-rate grandstander that should be thrown out of the Republican Party. Trump even took sides with Obama's Secretary of State John Kerry, who called Massie a masshole. But before we blindly support this bill because President Trump signed it, we need to not be like Nancy Pelosi and actually read what's in it.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Bipartisan legislation signed into law by President Trump would provide $1,200 payments to adults with annual incomes up to $75,000 plus another $500 per child. Some Americans earning more than $75,000 would also receive money if they meet certain qualifications outlined below. So right off the bat, we see that not even every single American will qualify for relief, even though literally the entire country is affected by this crisis. How is that fair? That means that hardworking Americans who pay tens of thousands of dollars every year in taxes will not see a single penny from this. In the United States, there are 157 million people in the workforce. If every single person qualified for relief and we multiplied 157 million by 1,200, that would only come out to $188 billion in aid. If we assume that all 327 million Americans were getting a check from the government, that would still only account for $392 billion. So even if every single American were getting a $1,200 check, which we know won't happen, that wouldn't even account for a fifth of the spending bill. And if only every working American got a $1,200 check, which we also know will not happen since you have to make less than $75,000, that would make up only 9% of the spending bill. Even if you include $500 for all 74 million children in this country, that only adds an additional $3 billion in aid, which is so negligible that it still keeps the relief at under 10%. So why is this being touted as a relief bill when the American people are getting the short end of the stick? And what is the other 91% of the spending bill going towards? You're going to feel disgusted and betrayed when you hear all of this. Let's take a look at where our tax dollars are going during this crisis. $7.5 million would go to the Smithsonian Institute. It's just so important during this crisis that we make sure a museum in Washington, D.C. is getting our hard-earned tax dollars instead of you, the hardworking American who lost their job because of this. $25 million would go to the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Why worry about putting food on your table when ballerinas in Washington, D.C. need to do some twirls. $75 million would go towards the National Endowment for the Arts. Because what could possibly be more important right now during this crisis than promoting the arts, right? $75 million would go to the National Endowment for the Humanities. I've literally never even heard of the NEH until this bill. So I guess if there's one thing we can thank Congress for, it's for making us aware of all these useless departments that we should definitely get rid of. Another $75 million would go to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And you know who that includes? NPR. And you know what NPR is doing? They're refusing to air President Trump's press briefings due to a pattern of false or misleading information provided that cannot be fact-checked in real time. So, let me get this straight. Trump signed off on a bill that will pay NPR millions of dollars just so they can refuse to air his press briefings? What sense does that even make? $50 million will go to the Institute of Museums and Libraries. I don't know about you guys, but from reading all of this to you, this bill kind of sounds more like a museum bailout than a relief bill. $258 million will go to international disaster assistance, because America's responsibility during this crisis should definitely be other countries, right? This one is really gonna tick you guys off. $350 million will go towards migration and refugee assistance, aka literally everything Trump has campaigned against. $88 million will go to the Peace Corps. Why? I have no clue. Amtrak will receive more than $1 billion since no one is riding their trains right now. Meanwhile, I can't even get back the money for my flight to my own wedding that the government canceled. This next one really makes no sense to me at all. $453 million will go to the operation of Indian programs. $300 million will go to Native American programs. $100 million will be made available for grants to Indian tribes under the Indian Community Development Block Grant. $69 million will go to the operation of Indian education programs, $5 million to the Office of Public and Indian Housing, $1 billion will go to Indian Health Services, and $1.2 billion will go to tenant-based rental assistance for public and Indian housing. That's over $3 billion that will go to Native Americans in this country. There are only about 1 million natives that even live on reservations here in America, which means we're spending roughly $3,000 per Native American on a reservation compared to your measly $1,200. Maybe Elizabeth Warren did have the right idea to call herself Native American. I'm really starting to sympathize with her after reading this bill. Lady Sacagawea want your taxes here. Before we take a look at some of the wasteful departments this bill is going towards, visit KaitlinBennett.org if you want to get some really cool shirts or health supplements to keep your immune system strong during these uncertain times. There are really awesome products there that will fit all of your needs and keep your body in the best shape. Let's look at some of the wasteful government departments this bill is going towards. A whopping $30 billion will go to the Department of Education for an Education Stabilization Fund. $10 billion will go to the Federal Aviation Administration. $250 million will go to the IRS, as if they don't steal enough of our money every year anyway. $400 million will go to election security grants. $200 million will go to the FCC. $275 million will go to the Federal Buildings Fund. The Department of Homeland Security will get $178 million. The TSA will get $100 million. Even though they're probably the most useless agency in the federal government. The Department of Labor will receive $345 million. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration will get $425 million. The Department of State will get $324 million. And the Social Security Administration will receive $300 million. $99.5 million will go to the Department of Energy. $60 million will go to NASA. $12.5 million will go to the Department of the Interior. $1 billion will go to the Defense Production Act purchases. $34 million will go to the National Forest System. Even trees are getting more money than you are. Perhaps the most damning thing about this bill is that in the House of Representatives, the very people who wrote this bill voted to give themselves a $25 million raise. That's more than $57,000 per U.S. representative compared to your measly $1,200 check. They'll also be giving $850 million to state and local law enforcement, even though state and local law enforcement agencies are refusing to enforce the law during this crisis. Right here in the state of Ohio, Cincinnati police warned that their department will no longer send officers to respond to assaults with no injuries, breaking and entering, criminal property damage, lost or stolen property, and menacing and phone harassment. Meanwhile, states such as New York, Tennessee, New Jersey, California, and Ohio have all released hundreds of prisoners due to the spread of the C word. So why in the world do we need to give local law enforcement nearly $1 billion if they're not going to do their job during this crisis? And if you thought the auto bailouts of 2008 were bad, this stimulus bill will give U.S. airlines a $58 billion bailout. According to Axios.com, half of the $58 billion will cover 750,000 employees, which would come out to $38,000 per employee. All in all, this disastrous bill adds up to $2 trillion. You'll only see a small fraction of the stimulus unless the government deems that you make too much, and you, the taxpayer, will be left footing the rest of the bill. I understand why Trump signed this, because he doesn't want to look like he's doing nothing during one of the worst crises in our nation's history. But I am shocked and appalled that he and the rest of the GOP would go along with the Democrats in passing this bill. This was passed under the guise of stimulating the economy as the stock markets tank and unemployment numbers continue to grow. But this will only harm the economy and make things much worse. Where do you think this money is going to come from? Oh right, your taxes. As November rolls around, it's important to remember that there's not just a presidential election coming up, but congressional races as well. If your representative supported this bill, you might want to think twice before casting a vote for them in your primaries. We need more Thomas Masseys and less Dan Crenshaws. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to like and share, hit that subscribe button, and click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you want to support my work, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Kaitlin Bennett and receive cool perks like an autographed photo from me in the mail each month. Or you can go to KaitlinBennett.org and get up to 75% off and free shipping on supplements and merchandise to support my work and start living a healthy life. My favorite product is Turbo Force because it gives me all the energy I need to make it through a long day of doing interviews. There are tons of other health supplements you can choose from to keep your body healthy during these uncertain times. And check out the website banned.video to see uncensored content from conservative creators that have been erased from social media.